News Stories from the Green Forest by Mama Bear. Green Forest and CBDC. CBDC in Europe by October. Central bank digital currencies is legal? It is well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning. Henry Ford. Welcome to my channel. I am Mama Bear and I will tell you the adventures in the Green Forest. The Green Forest is a wonderful place where the forest animals live in harmony and understanding. Mama Bear has noticed lately that her friends are no longer as close as before. She feels a strong sense of danger. So, she has long conversations with the wise old crow who flies over the forest and sees everything. It seems that in the midst of the magical swamp, there are some dangers. Some strange creatures want to disturb the peace of the forest. I ask you to listen to me and together we will see what the problems are and how we can solve them to save the green forest that we all love. In the silence of the forest, in the midst of the wonderful songs of the birds, we hear, when we are attentive, the voices of the bear mother and the crow who are discussing money today. Can we analyze CBDC from a legal standpoint? Through the prism of the Bill of Exchange Act, when you perform work, what you receive in return should be of equal value. CBDC it doesn't even meet the characteristics of the concept of money, which, among other characteristics, must be anonymous. So people would be forced to work and exchange goods for simple numbers on a computer. How can this be legal? The legal analysis of CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, raises several fundamental issues. Let's go through them one by one. 1. Compliance with the Bill of Exchange Act principle. The Bill of Exchange Act, in the UK and other jurisdictions, states that any exchange transaction must involve a fair consideration between goods, services, and payment. Money must be an equivalent of the work performed or the goods traded. CBDCs are not real money, but just a state-controlled digital record, which can be restricted, cancelled, or monitored. This violates the principle of fair payment. A person offers their labor but receives in return numbers on a computer, with no real material backing. Violation of the basic principles of money. Money has several fundamental characteristics. White heavy checkmark fungibility. A unit must be interchangeable with another. White heavy checkmark stability. The value should not fluctuate radically. White heavy checkmark acceptability. It must be freely accepted as a medium of exchange. White heavy checkmark anonymity. Transactions should not be subject to total control. Lightbulb CBDCs do not respect anonymity. Each transaction can be monitored in real time. Limited for certain purchases, e.g., banning the purchase of certain goods. Expirable, money could have an expiration date. Conditioned on social scores or compliance with government policies. Violation of the right to private property. A person's labor is personal property, and exchanging it for state-controlled digital currency means losing control over one's wealth. If the money is only digital and controlled by the government, it can be confiscated, frozen, or restricted without any real legal protection. Unlike cash or material goods, CBDCs can be erased instantly if a person does not comply with imposed rules. The legality of forced imposition of CBDC. The principle of contractual freedom. Legally, no one can be forced to accept a form of payment that is not in their interest. If people cannot refuse CBDC and cannot choose alternatives, cash, gold, crypto, this system becomes an illegal monopoly over means of exchange. International law and the prohibition of economic slavery. If labor is paid in a system with no real counterpart, it is a form of involuntary servitude. People would be forced to work for a system that doesn't give them the freedom to use money as they wish, violating human rights and economic freedoms. Conclusion: is CBDC legal? No, in its current form it should not be legal because it violates the work payment equivalence principle. It does not meet the fundamental criteria for money. It allows the government to control citizens' private property. It abolishes economic freedom and introduces coercive monopolies over personal finances. The only way to legalize CBDC would be through legislative force, ignoring fundamental human rights. Therefore, civic and legal opposition against such imposition is crucial. Central banks are actually private banks. Even if a law is issued requiring the government to impose CBDC, in reality, it forces you to enter into a contract with a private company. If you're forced to enter a contract, that contract is no longer valid based on the principle, any act I am forced to do is no longer my act. Exactly, here comes a fundamental principle of contract law, free and uncoerced consent. If a state imposes CBDC, and it is issued by a central bank that actually operates as a private entity, then citizens are forced into a contract with a private company without a real alternative. The legal principle of the nullity of forced contracts. A contract is valid only if there is free consent, the person must willingly accept the terms of the contract. It is fair, there must be no obvious imbalance between the parties. Both parties have negotiation capacity. If one party imposes conditions unilaterally, the contract becomes abusive. Any act I am forced to do is no longer my act. This principle comes from the classic doctrine of contracts. A contract obtained through coercion is void by law. If you don't have the option to refuse, it's not a contract but an imposition. The government, as an intermediary of a private entity, the central bank, does not have the legal authority to force citizens into a contractual relationship with a private corporation without real consent. Possible legal implications of forced CBDC imposition. 5. Violation of consumer rights. Citizens are obligated to accept a financial product with no option to choose anything else. 6. Potential abuse of dominant position. An artificial monopoly is created, eliminating cash and private alternatives. 7. Violation of treaties regarding economic freedom. International law guarantees the right to dispose of one's property and labor. Potential economic slavery. If people are forced to accept a digital system where the state and a corporation decide where, when, and how they can use their money, they become prisoners of this system. Conclusion: the CBDC imposed by the state but issued by a private bank de facto is a forced and abusive contract. In a fair justice system, it would have no legal value because it violates the fundamental principles of contract law and human rights. Please wake up, dear and good friends. The crow and Mama Bear were always discussing the world beyond the glade, the changes that could be felt in the air, and the unseen dangers lurking in the shadows. In the magical swamp, where things are never what they seem, and those who step into it sink without realizing, it seems that the snakes in suits are plotting something. Strange creatures live in that swamp. Beings that wear shimmering masks, snakes in elegant costumes, frogs with crooked crowns, and mosquitoes with golden wigs. They all sing each other's praises, but behind those sweet words, dark deeds are hiding. The swamp wants to spread, and all the strange beings that live there seem to have siren-like voices that can put the naive and trusting residents of the green forest to sleep. Let's hope they all wake up in time to save their enchanting forest. Thank you for listening, and this way, our friends have a real chance to stop the swamp's advance. See you soon on the next chapter. Mama Bear. Any resemblance to characters, situations, and real life is purely coincidental. However, a little research never hurts, does it?